Just fire away with
First
questions.
impressions, like what have you taken the spring and summer into these first 2 days? Where do you feel like you are, alignment, communication, etc.?
Yeah, it was great. Last couple weeks of the summer program, the OTAs, we kind of got a head start, so we were able to go through some of the install preview, so that when we came out today, yesterday and today, that they're kind of familiar with some of that stuff. So their communication's been good. We had a couple yesterday, and you always a little bit different when you go against the offense and things are moving faster pace. To be able to see some of the unique formations and some of the motions and stuff, we need as much of that as possible to get all of the communication down. But it was good. It'll pick up here as we go. We're kind of just focusing on some early down stuff. As we get to more situational football, third down, red area, that communication is really going to be tested. So we'll see what happens here in the next couple of days coming up.
How do you determine where you go? Jim Knowles was kind of an overseer.
Yeah.
You seem to be a little bit more hands-on positionally. How do you determine throughout the day where you're spending?
Yep. That's a great question. As a young coach, one time I was talking to Mike Tomlin, and he said one of the hardest things to transition from a position coach to a coordinator and then a head coach is really kind of mapping out where you go during practice. You want to have a plan. So I always kind of took that advice, and I look at the practice schedule. I looked at the script. Who's working on what fundamentals. A lot of times that has to do with what we did the day before. So I'm looking for some improvement and some different points of emphasis there. And then I know that sometimes when I go to an individual drill, it's going to intensify a little bit if I'm there. So I'm always looking at the schedule and what we need to work on that day, and then I'll map out what periods I go where.
Now, obviously, Caleb's going to play a vital role in this defense wherever you decide to play him. It looks like he's playing at a lot of different spots for you right now. How much
Folks, we have Bryson Rogers on the goal line.
Are you thinking about in terms of what you can and can't do with Caleb, depending on what Malik and Jalen and Leroy and the rest of the safeties where they are?
Yeah, really good question as far as when you have depth in a room, how do you utilize all the players that are in it so you can get them all on the field? And I think creating jobs for guys in that, sense is really important to kind of give them an opportunity to go learn and put themselves on the field. Caleb is such a versatile player that now you can do that. You can move him into some different spots to give those other guys a chance to get on the field in those roles. So I feel like that room is really working. I feel like there's some good young guys there that have an opportunity to kind of, step up and contribute. So having that piece and moving that around is good for us to be able to evaluate those guys to see if we can, through the course of the season do that.
What do you like about that? What does he bring to that nickel role versus what he would bring to maybe being a strong free safety?
Yeah, I think his ability to kind of play, whether it's nickel or safety, or maybe he's just lined up in some different, areas. It's just his communication. He's such a good communicator, just to kind of let everybody know we have words that settle everything down. Even though I may be lined up in something that may look like a certain position, it may not be that position, but the communication tells everybody what it is, and that's critical. Otherwise, everyone's kind of like, where are we going and how does this all fit? So his ability to do that is really kind of what makes that go.
Coach Day mentioned when you guys brought in Bo that you guys have a lot of different pass rushers that you feel like you can come up with creative things to do with them. What are kind of some of the things you're looking at in terms of how you can utilize Bo versus Kenyatta versus CJ? You name it.
Yeah, I mean, you can never have enough pass rush. I think that's, always a great theory as a defensive coach, and certainly the best coverage is pass rush. We want to get there as much as we can. So those guys have some position flex too. They can move into different alignments, and I think the more of those guys you get on the field, the faster you can become in the pass rush game. Certainly down and distance and situation will dictate some of that, but I think just having players like that can go inside, outside, maybe line up in some different alignments, really make every offensive lineman that we play against prepare for you. That's, I think, always harder during the course of the week, of a game week, rather than you're always in one spot all the time. It just kind of depends on each player, but we have some versatility there.
Coach Day has challenged the defensive tackles to step up a lot. How have you seen kind of that depth progress here as camp has started?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the spring and then really the summer. I think the summer those guys had a different mindset to come in and work, and with Coach Mick, really push their bodies, really work on getting stronger, being able to, use the leverage that they have, and that's what we're looking for now. It's hard without pads on to kind of get a judge on all that. We'll get a good look at it as we put them on tomorrow, but I think they really understand, like, hey, it's time to go. It's your time to get out there. It's, those older guys aren't here anymore, and we've got to have a different mindset about that. We've got to have the mindset where this is my job, I got to go earn a job, or I have to have this position, or the team needs me here, and I got to, really do a good job of playing this role. So I think that pressure is on them. I think they feel it. I think, Coach Johnson's the best there is, so he's got them going in the direction we need them to, and we need to see that tomorrow when we put the pads on.
Without Edric, at least for the time being, doing much, What's your just feeling about the depth at defensive tackle?
Yeah, no, we just kind of keep, going forward. I think we have some young guys out there that need those reps, and it's really good to see, Taiwan or, J-Mo, those guys get out there and get that opportunity to go out. K-Mac, obviously, will be in the middle there too, and Will. So we have some really good players there, and, Edric will get out there as soon as he can, but right now it's opportunity for other guys to go out and show us what they can do.
Do you have a sense of how long he'll be missing?
I don't.
When you chose your breath, he was walking around out there today though with a brace on and stuff. And that's a good sign, right?
Yeah, it's always good when they're out there for sure. And a great thing was he was out there and we're talking through communication and we're watching the play, so he's getting those really good mental reps too, which is great.
I get this question a lot. So I'm gonna ask you, what's going to be different about the Matt Patricia coordinated defense from last year? I mean, and I'm not looking for top secrets and all that kind of stuff, but how would you describe to somebody, like if you go to a lunch and they want what's going to be different about your defense, how would you explain it?
Yeah, it's a really great question. Obviously not firsthand being in the building last year, but look, we have great coaches that are here, that were here last year, and I think it's my job to really kind of make sure I'm adapting and learning to what we did really well last year, because obviously it was great, and we have great coaches that coach these guys really well and develop these players at a high level. So I think from that standpoint, there'll be some things that are very similar to what everybody's used to. I maybe teach a little bit differently. It's probably going I can't really speak on it. I just teach the way that I do. It's more conceptually and big picture and things like that, which gives us a little bit more position flex and multiplicity from that standpoint to put guys in different roles. So maybe that's it.
But coming from the NFL, you're kind of a matchup guy. I mean, to a certain extent, right? I mean,
that was the biggest lesson I learned, I think, when I went to the NFL from college, was just how much it was to me. I used to say it was more like the NBA than it was anything else. Matchups and all that stuff is really important. That's definitely important. If you're going to go play against JJ, you better know where he's lined up every single play. So some of that still carries over. But right now for us, it's just about how do we improve fundamentally? How do we get a lot of young players? We lost a lot of really experienced veteran leadership guys last year that are, in training camps right now. So how do we get these young guys who are super talented up to speed, get them the reps they need so they have that game-like experience?
Matt, when you got here, I don't think any of us knew how big of a hugger you were.
I'm Italian, so it's kind of just what I do.
Okay. You seem to have developed some pretty strong relationships in a hurry. I know that that's a matter of time and trust, but have you been making a greater emphasis on that? Did you go to the college game? How have you seen it?
Yeah.
How's it compare to what you're used to at the NFL level, or maybe that's not the way it works? I don't know.
No, it certainly does. I have great friends and relationships and players that I've coached in the NFL, and we have great guys here. The players here they're just great young men, so you can't help but gravitate to them. And as a coach, that's my role, right? I want to mentor and coach and help develop young men, 18 to 23-year-old men in those stages of not only football but life. So it's a true joy for me just to be around them. They have that energy, they have that youthfulness about them. They're very into the game of football, which I love, so they want to learn. I love to teach it, and just being able to be in that situation where I can help them outside of the game is really important to me. I think I've said to a lot of them, look, I have kids now that look up to them, so it's my job to be able to do everything I can to help them be the best versions of themselves. So that's what, my kids are looking up to.
Yeah, it might seem obvious. I would imagine on August 1st, there's a different level of comfort and relationships and familiarity both ways, from players to you and you to players. Is this camp different? How is it different than spring for you?
Yeah.
Now that you have that built in.
I think you're always trying to develop the relationships and earn everybody's trust. I think it's really important that I earn their trust. And they need to understand that I'm here to try to help them be the best version of themselves that they can be. And honestly, they're helping me with a lot too. It's great to be able to lean on those guys and ask questions, and they're telling me really good information. So I just think that relationship is what we're continually building, and it's a process, and it'll be different now than it is August to September to December and forward. So that's the great part about the game. And I told them the other day, we were talking about relationships and how important they are, and it's one of the biggest things I think you miss when this game ends, and why a lot of people get into coaching and always want to be around the game is the games are great, the wins are great, the championships are all great, but you miss the locker room, you miss the camaraderie, you miss the friendship, you miss that time together. It's something that I just think is unique to the sport.
How much of your time have you spent just sort of like watching college football generally since you've been here, just to try to figure out sort of like what's in trend compared to the NFL and what you guys might see this year?
Yeah, a lot. Watched a lot of film and really started that process last year. With kind of a unique year for me last year. I watched a lot of NFL and a lot of college tape just for that reason. I think even if you're in the NFL, the matriculation of the players coming in, the game has changed. There is a lot more influence. There always is college influence in the NFL. And look, you're trying to play to the strengths of the guys that you get in the NFL, and they're coming from college. So what do they do well? And you want to study that. But being in this environment, obviously, we're watching that all the time, and we're taking a look at the tape of what is trending, what do you have to be ready for. The biggest thing for me is really the differences, right? I think that's one of the biggest keys for me to study and make sure that I'm paying attention with the hash marks, just simple things like that, but formationally, some of the rules that are different. And then, you take the rules and then you coach from the rules. So how are we coaching everything and making sure that it matches up with how it's going to be officiated on the field?
Is the biggest difference the hash marks and the space?
That's a big one. It is a really big one. There's some formation and things that are a little bit different too, I would say, because of the hash marks, but being able to have some of those unbalanced looks and some of those unique sort of formations, I think are just different. And then just, whether it's the nuances in the rules, right? Where we're allowed to jam and reroute and where we can't is a little bit different. I'm a little bit excited about what we can do. So those are the main ones.
Day 2 camp, what are just your initial impressions, what you like out there, what you're seeing?
Yeah. I like our guys are really doing a great job with the installations. We're going pretty quick, so they're coming in and they're pretty large, but I think our guys are handling that information on the field. And really one of the things that's been awesome about that is even yesterday, the stuff that we put in, we kind of ran a little bit of that today, made a couple tweaks, and those corrections were, handled really well today. So that to me is a sign of a smart team that can handle those adjustments, can be able to make those changes, which is what we're going to need to do during the game. So that's really encouraging. I thought yesterday we flew around really well. We attacked the ball well. We got some turnovers there. I know that when that happens, the next day the offense is going to, it's going to tighten down. You may not get the same effect, but I still felt like we were attacking the ball that way.
Did you mention you're going to put the pads on tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
With you mentioned Caleb's ability to move around and communicate. What needs to happen with, say, Jalen and Malik to make sure that they can keep up?
Yeah. Biggest thing for them is just every single day to improve, and so we'll mark out things, certainly like communication. That is the biggest thing when you're a safety and you're playing in the middle of the defense. You have to be able to communicate to both sides. You have to be able to communicate to the linebackers. You have to tie in all of that coverage stuff together, and then with the motions and the formations. And I think for them, with that communication, the hardest thing is just getting the game to slow down, as things start to move. That comes with game reps. We don't have game reps before we get to game 1, so we're going to have to get it in practice the best we can.
How do you make sure you're not predictable when it's like Caleb with Malik versus Caleb with Jalen? Because there's different things that they can do, but you can't be predictable.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-scout is really important there, but I think that they are well-rounded players. They all can do some things that be in different positions, be in different alignments, and still be productive. So making sure that we're conscious of that and continually moving them around because we don't want to just be in one situation where you always know what it looks like.
Matt, you're talking about the differences, hash marks. You just mentioned there's no games before you play Texas.
Yeah.
Like, just in general, how are you finding that adjustment in terms of the big differences between college life and NFL?
Yeah, I never really appreciated those preseason games in the NFL, but right now I'm wishing we had one. I think, we would say it all the time, like everybody needs preseason, everyone needs training camp, and certainly game day operation I think is one that is really important, and I thought that was great to be able to do that in the NFL. We got to hit the ground running when we get to week 1 and make sure that as a coaching staff, we're on point. We have good communication, whether it's from upstairs to downstairs, being able to see what's on the field. Even just simple things like substitutions and packages going in and out and people being in the right spot. So we have to simulate that as we go through training camp to make sure, our guys are great. They've done it before. It's probably more me nervous than anything. I'm the one that's got to adjust and change. So I think they'll be fine. I'll be the one that'll be trying to figure it out.
Matt, you mentioned the day before you kind of plan out the next day. After 2 days, is there a position group you want to spend more time with tomorrow?
I'm going to wait till I go back and look at today's tape, and then we'll kind of evaluate that. I will always generally gravitate to the linebackers. That is my natural sort of like backer hood. That's where I kind of hang out. But once we get through today's practice, and again, it was a little bit more early down stuff that I want to take a look at and just make sure that we're sound. There's a couple things I saw at practice that I want to make sure that they looked a little bit loose to me, so I want to tighten up. I'll probably be there tomorrow.
To clarify what Caleb is doing, there are times where it looks like he is like in that nickel spot, and they're two deeper safeties. Do you call that a nickel? Like, what? I don't know. Like, just
It could be a couple different calls.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be a couple different looks or a couple different, just, sometimes based on formation. It could be something that maybe they're doing that we maybe change an alignment or switch something up.
And when you put him there, is that because you like him there? Or is it to give those guys a chance to play deeper? Like, what's the sort of the balance between finding the spot for him versus like, oh, we want to also just free these guys up to play?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Do we like him in a certain position and that's where we want to go? Maybe it's a matchup, maybe it's an alignment, maybe it's just depending on the motion. Sometimes some of the motion happens late. You got to be careful about trying to either spin or adjust or move late and getting caught out of position. Sometimes it's actually just better just to stay. They stay where they are and then play the positions that they're in, as opposed to trying to maybe overrun and kind of get out leveraged. So some of that has to do with some of the formation adjustments too.
Matt, last year when you were a ship looking for a new port, so to speak, if you wasn't there, what is something you definitely changed about yourself or your approach, or that you could kind of put your finger on?
Yeah.
Having that sabbatical.
That's a great question. For me, I think last year, a couple things. One, it was really going back to, I got into coaching for a reason. I left engineering to get into coaching because I just really wanted to teach and mentor, and how important my coaches were, especially in college. My college coaches were to just growing up, and being a young adult, a young man trying to figure it out. And so it was really a way to kind of give back. I want to give back and I want to help people. I just really want to help people and teach. Came from that background with my parents and stuff. So I think I had a good opportunity to kind of sit back and be like, hey, I got to get back to just, getting the joy of being a great teacher and a great mentor and those relationships. And so that was a big thing for me. That was really important. And that's what a lot of it drew me back to the college game, to being around, guys of that age, and that be able to have that influence. I will tell you that also last year doing media, I have a much better appreciation for how difficult the job is for all of you in the media to, do what you guys do every single day. Like that's not natural for me, but the work that everyone puts into it from the media standpoint, and to get the message out to the fans, right? And to be that connection between the coaches and the team and the fans, and to really also have that football mind, right? Where you're diving into the game and you're taking a look at schematics and scheme, and all of that is to me, that is an incredibly difficult job. And I would say I have a huge appreciation for that.
Players who were at media days last week really talked up Kenyatta Jackson as someone who stepped up as a leader. What kind of growth have we seen from him this offseason?
I would echo all of that. I think Kenyatta has just really, from day one that I walked in the building, stepped forward and said, okay, hey, let me be in front. Let me do the drill first. Let me learn, let me do the lip. Whatever it is, it's like, get me out in the front. Let me go compete. Let me push myself. I think that everyone sees how hard he is pushing himself, and you can't help but gravitate towards that. Saying, this guy is working this hard, man. I got to get my stuff together. I got to go work as hard as he is, because, he is setting the standard as we go forward. And I think everybody feels that.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks,
All right, appreciate it.